Hi guys, and welcome back to a new video. So I'm not going to go into too much of an introduction for this. I think the thumbnail title basically explains it all. A lot of you that follow me on Instagram will know exactly what this video is about. For those of you that don't, I will pop my name on the screen for you and leave it in the drop box down below, so you can just keep up to date with me and what I do on a regular basis. But basically I became very ill over Christmas and it nearly cost me my life. So this video is basically explaining everything that happened for the main reason to raise awareness and as much as possible to help you guys take, I think just essentially to take as much preventative action as possible, and also take from this that your health should be your main priority. We all have our own priorities, we've all got different things that are important to us in life, but health really should be up there in one of the top few, if not the top one. But this basically is my journey with mycoplasma pneumonia and other complications that I had as a result of my immune system attacking itself. As a just very quick disclaimer before we start the video, I will be incorporating some quite graphic images of basically what happened to my face from the type of pneumonia that I suffered with. For those of you that aren't aware of what mycoplasma pneumonia is, it's a type of pneumonia that attacks the mucosal barriers in the body. So I essentially had a full face of infection, which was on the outside and the inside of my mouth. And yeah, they're not nice photos, so I'm going to pop the times at which they appear in the video in the drop box down below. So for those of you that aren't willing to see them, which I completely understand, you basically have prior warning. But without further ado, I'm going to crack on because this is going to be long enough as it is. I really do hope that you reach the end of the video and you understand why I have been struggling quite a lot recently. Yeah, it all kind of makes sense basically. So I'm going to kickstart off with basically what happened to start with, all the symptoms that I suffered with before being admitted to hospital, which basically all happened around the 15th of December. Just to give you a little bit of background info about my health last year anyway, because it will make a little bit of sense, and I do believe that some of the things that I went through and how my health was actually declining were definitely reasons as to why I became as ill as what I did. So at the very beginning of 2019 I had a very severe cold. I had a really nasty chest infection that lasted about 2 months, and I am susceptible to colds like any other individual is, but last year I probably had about 5 colds in total, not counting the pneumonia that I went through. So it became a little bit of a repetitive pattern last year, how poorly I was becoming. I also really suffered quite severely with hay fever, which again affects me some years, affects me not some years. But I'm the type of person that if I suffer with a headache, I don't take paracetamol, I go have a sleep. Or if I'm just generally not feeling well or I've got a cold, I don't take any flu tablets. I literally just allow my body to get some immunity to it. But last year, because of how severe my hay fever was, I had to take tablets, and I just noticed certain things about my skin and my just general well-being and health started to deteriorate. My hair began to fall out, in the shower was becoming very thin, my nails wouldn't grow whatsoever. I started to develop acne, and I also was on 2 significant cuts last year, one at the very beginning of the year and one towards the end of the year, which I went into without any background knowledge. I kind of just did from testing and just working and figuring it out myself, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the cut that I was on towards Christmas did not have a cut-off point. And my friends and family were getting quite concerned about me because I'm very much a person, when I have an idea in mind and I want to get somewhere, I just go with it and nothing stops me. Sometimes that has its advantages, sometimes it has its disadvantages, and I can honestly tell you that if what happened to me at Christmas didn't happen, I actually don't know what point I would have stopped trying to lose weight and becoming this version of myself that quite clearly I wasn't capable of becoming. It was completely ruining me. During this entire time as well, up until September, I also was taking a PPI, which I've been taking ever since I was 14. For those of you that aren't aware what a PPI is, it's basically a proton pump inhibitor, and it was omeprazole. It's basically an antacid medication to help with acid reflux. For those of you that aren't aware, I do suffer with a stomach condition, which developed when I was 7, and then as a result I got acid reflux developed when I was 14, and I've basically been on a PPI ever since I was 14 up until being 22, so I was on it for 8 years. You shouldn't be really on it longer than a year. So I definitely felt in my gut that that had something to play with me becoming quite poorly. I also started developing allergies to certain things, so foods that I used to be able to consume, I used to be able to eat everything and anything. I then started having a slight allergy towards wheat. I started to have allergies towards some makeup, so I used to get mouth infections as a result of lipsticks. So something was really telling me that something significantly was affecting my health, and my gut was just telling me that this PPI was doing more damage than good. So last year I was essentially in and out of doctors' appointments, and it just really was a crap time in terms of my health. So what happened at Christmas, like I said, I kind of, in a very, very weird way, am grateful for, because I've changed a lot of habits and my total outlook on life has now changed. But I definitely do feel it's as a result of doing things last year and taking certain medication that's not helped my cause whatsoever. So that's just a little bit of generic background info for those of you that weren't aware that I was on a PPI. And I highly recommend that if you are taking omeprazole, that you do get checked with your doctor, particularly if you've been on it for longer than a year or a couple of years, because you really should not be on it for a long time. It is damaging. They basically are designed to essentially stop the production of something happening physiologically within your body. It's just not a good thing. So if you are young like me, particularly if you are 14 years old like I was, and at one point was on 60 milligrams of esomeprazole, which is the highest form of omeprazole at 17, there's clearly a physiological problem that I had that was causing the acid reflux that needed to be checked before I was just being pumped with a lot of medication. Anyways, I'm not going to go into more into that because that's just going to piss me off. But if you watched my previous YouTube video, you'll see that I moved into uni halls about 4 weeks prior to Christmas. So I had another cold then, and it's quite common when you're in university, it's going to happen. And I eventually got over it and everything was sweet. I was really, really, really happy. And then all of a sudden on the 15th of December, things started to change. And this is when I first started to begin developing the symptoms that then ended me up being in hospital a week later. So on the Sunday, my parents and I decided that we were going to go down to Birmingham for the day to do a bit of Christmas shopping. And I was feeling okay. I had a cheap meal the night before, was feeling a little bit rough with my stomach. But to be honest with you, I was fine. And we got down to Worcester and we're on the train to Birmingham. And in the last 10 to 20 minutes, I just really all of a sudden randomly had a horrible moment. There was a constant tannoy going over the train at the time about a sickness bug going around, and at first, when I started to have the symptoms, which I'll describe in a second, I literally thought, yeah, that's what I've got. I clearly must have it because I've never felt like this ill before, and I can't imagine it really being anything else. I literally had the worst hot flush that I've ever been through, which literally travelled from my feet up to my head. It was vile. And I had to take my coat off, and it was one of those hot flushes where literally, even if you just stripped all of your clothing off, like it's just not going to cool you down. And then all of a sudden I started to shake and I felt incredibly dizzy, and then this really horrible strong urge to be sick came on. At this point I thought, yeah, it has to be the sickness bug. And then the next step was losing my vision, which for me was the scariest part. And all I can describe it as is when you sit up too quickly for being sat down for too long and you get like the blurry lights going on in your eyes. I literally had that, but it covered both eyes and I couldn't see anything. And at this point I started to panic and I said to my dad, I can't see anything. and my mum and dad were being amazing. They were just helping me calm down, because I don't get anxiety very often, but obviously this was a very anxious and very horrible situation to be in. I was in a very crowded train and there was no signs of us stopping anytime soon. And then all of a sudden the eyesight thing went and we came up to the platform, but then it came back again the moment that I moved, because there was a bin behind me on the train, and with such a strong urge to be ill, I literally thought that was going to happen next. Anyways, we got off the platform and I literally just went immediately from so boiling hot to freezing cold and having to put my coat back on. And my mum checked my head and said, I can feel you've got a temperature coming, I'm going to give you some paracetamol. So we went out to Grand Central and we went and got some paracetamol, and to be honest with you, I cracked on with the rest of the day and I was actually okay. Was quite concerned that I might take another funny turn, but to be honest with you, I was okay. I managed to eat and managed to do a bit of walking around Birmingham. I think the fresh air just did me a bit of good. And that evening my parents did want me to come back home just to keep an eye on me after what happened, but I said, look, I'm fine, let me stay here, see how I get on tomorrow and I'll keep in contact. Monday then came, and honestly I woke up in the morning and felt like I'd run a marathon. The ache in my body was ridiculous and it was everywhere. It wasn't just in one certain area, but the most predominant painful areas were in the back of my head here and at the front here, and also like this area of the head, so I had it in the neck and just here. And it was as if I'd slept really awkwardly, which I hadn't, but you just can't lift your head off the pillow. You just have no energy, you just don't want to do anything. And I was incredibly tired and my appetite just wasn't there. And every time I got in and out of bed, I was hot, cold, hot, cold. My mum is actually a university student at the same university as me, so she came and checked on me later that day. And she said, Jess, you've got a raging temperature, I need you to come home, I want to keep an eye on you. So I came home, and Tuesday and Wednesday I couldn't go to my lectures. I still had a raging temperature that wouldn't go down, and by Wednesday I still had the muscle aches. Was starting to feel a bit better, where my appetite perked up a little bit and I was able to get up and not be sleeping so much, but I started to develop a really, really horrible cough. Thursday I managed to go into uni, and so did I go in on Friday. But the cough really started to get worse and worse and worse. At this point I decided to do the typical Google search and see what it was that I was suffering with, and I had every single symptom of influenza. So at this point I thought, you know, you've just got some horrible viral condition, rest up before Christmas and you'll be absolutely fine. I wasn't. It might seem a bit weird talking about this, that I'm keeping as positive as possible, but that is just the kind of person that I am. I can't look at this in a negative way, because at the end of the day I'm sat here able to talk to you about this. So that's why I might have the odd giggle, maybe the odd cry at some point during the video, but yeah, anyway. I then started to get a really bad cough on the Friday, and it really started to develop, and unfortunately we had family come down from London and they all had colds as well because they were young kids, so that probably didn't help my cause whatsoever. Anyways, came to the Saturday, and the Saturday I just knew something was wrong. I felt even worse than I had all week, and when I thought I was getting better I really wasn't. And I had to go to work. I knew it wasn't the right thing to do whatsoever, and I completely regret going, because I feel that I wouldn't have been in such a bad place if I hadn't have gone. But I went in and it was a 4-hour shift, and my parents, honestly, I can't thank my parents enough during this whole thing, because they stay in town for the entire 4 hours of my shift to make sure that if I was really ill to come home, because they knew that I wasn't at all well. And they also had their growing concerns, but obviously they didn't want to scare or upset me in case they thought it was anything more severe. But towards the last hour of my shift, I still had this horrible cough that would not let up. I was struggling to actually breathe as a result of it. I know that sounds like it's an exaggeration, but you know when you just get that cough where you just got no let up, it's incredibly painful. But in the last hour of work, my mouth started to go funny. Now the reason that I knew this is because last year, one thing that I did forget to mention at the beginning of this video was I managed to retain a staph infection in my mouth. I'm going to be completely honest with you, staph is one thing that I tend to get sometimes. I've had a staph infection in my nose when I was younger, and then I got a staph infection in my mouth last year. It was actually as a result of an infected cup on a night out, but I am susceptible to catching it. And particularly with how ill my health was last year, it was no surprise that I had it. So I knew instantly on this Saturday in the last hour of work that I was getting something wrong with my mouth again, and I know that I'm at really low ebb when that happens. Came out of work and I said to Mum, look, I need to go to A&E. I said, I can feel I've got ulcers developing in my mouth. And they took me, so I finished. Sorry, it's at this point where it gets a little bit hard. They took me into A&E, and I can honestly tell you that there was not a single seat spare in A&E. And we got there at 6:30, and I was in A&E till 1 AM in the morning. And my cough was relentless, and the ulcers started to grow and grow and grow, to the point where I had ulcers coming out on the inside of my cheeks. And they were all in the inside of my lip here and in the inside here. And then I started to get really, really bad tonsil pain. I started getting ulcers developing on my tonsil. At the rate that this was going, my mum had to speak to somebody because we were really concerned that this spreads any further down, that eventually my breathing could potentially become a bit compromised. And they immediately put me in to go and have a chest x-ray done because they could hear how bad my cough was as well. Finally got the results back from the chest x-ray probably around midnight, and I got told they could see some slight shadowing on my lung, and they predicted that it could be pneumonia, but they sent me home with some medication. And I remember asking them, is this going to get rid of the ulcers that are in my mouth? I said, because at this point I was on paracetamol in A&E, and I wasn't able to swallow without being in excruciating pain. My mouth just felt like I had cotton wool stuffed everywhere. And they said, no, this is going to get rid of the infection in your lung, be on the antibiotics twice a day for 10 days, and then it hopefully should get rid of the ulcers, which look like they're a result of your body trying to fight the infection. Got back home and I woke up the next morning. My throat was just unbelievably sore. My tonsil was completely swollen, and the ulcers had all burst on the inside of my mouth, and I just had a load of peeling skin inside here. And I just about managed to eat something because I was starving hungry, and I managed to take one tablet. But then my mum was on the phone to 111 all day because I just couldn't get up. I was in and out like this all the time, out of consciousness. I just really did not feel at all well. And my dad stayed with me the entire day because this was a special day for my grandma. It was her birthday. And when they came back, my cousin took one look at me and said, get her in. I just completely lost colour in my face. I was not at all well. I just wasn't with it. And the medication, even though it was one tablet, I just couldn't swallow the next one because of how sore my throat was becoming. So my mum called an ambulance, and they came and they did some checks on me, and they said, yeah, you need to go in, you're not at all well. Went in by ambulance, and they put a cannula in me straight away and were giving me paracetamol because I constantly had to take it at this point. And I got in and was sat in triage probably till about 4 AM in the morning, and I got in at about 9 PM the night before. And when I got in, the same doctor that had seen me the night before could see the state that I had deteriorated, and they did some general level checks on me, and my oxygen was very low, so they put me on oxygen straight away. And they also took blood tests, and they also organised another chest x-ray. Blood tests came back as being 100% infection in my blood, and they got the results back from the chest x-ray which confirmed that I did have pneumonia. and my temperature at this point was 39.7, so I was in quite a bad way. They then managed to find room for me on the Frome ward, and I was taken up there, and I was in the Frome ward for 10 days. This is the part of the video where it's quite difficult to talk about because, to be honest with you, quite a lot of it is a blur. I was sleeping and trying to rest as much as possible with everything that was going on. But what I am going to do is here I'm going to insert one photo of me when I turned up to hospital. It is not a nice photo whatsoever. I am completely unrecognisable. But one of the first symptoms that started to develop the following morning after being in triage and finally getting into my room after 4 AM in the morning was I started to severely dribble from my mouth. I think it was as a result of my mouth trying to heal because of the amount of ulcers, but more ulcers were still developing even though some had burst and started to go. And I had so many things done. I had a CT scan, and I was on a lot of antibiotics. At one point I had 2 IV machines attached in both arms, and right now I'm just going to put different photos up in order of what happened in the 10 days. But there was one particular day where it was very scary. So obviously I wasn't able to eat or drink at this point. And you can go a few days without eating, but you can't go a few days without drinking. And I wasn't able to get anything down me. It actually transpired that I did have tonsillitis as well as pneumonia. I also developed an upper respiratory tract infection, and I had a severe case of conjunctivitis where I'll put a picture on the screen. I also had a severe nose infection, and my tongue had also become ulcerated as well. So eating and drinking just wasn't an option, so I was on IV fluids. But I became incredibly dehydrated, and basically I had one day where about 10 consultants came in and they had to figure out what they were doing. They basically put me on an antiviral medication as soon as I came into the hospital, but they hadn't configured yet what actual type of pneumonia it was that I was suffering with. I had a specialist come and visit me from the, I believe it's the nose, I think it's the nose, eye and throat department in Worcester Acute. I could be wrong there, but somebody came from Worcester to come and check on me because the main concern was that the ulcers would develop into my throat. Okay, the video cut off then, so I don't know where it came out to. But yeah, I had somebody come from Worcester to check my throat, and they weren't concerned that the actual ulcers were going down my throat, but obviously if they were to develop I would have to go down to Worcester Acute because Hereford Hospital wouldn't be able to help in that department. But I had 3 room changes. I ended up being in intensive care because I was declining, and on this one particular day that I was describing, I basically had my parents tell people, like, you need to get your shit together. The NHS does fantastically, but the ward was very compromised with a short amount of staff, and there were a lot of elderly people in there that needed a lot of care and attention. But the medication that I was on for 6 days out of the 10-day ordeal was not working. At first, a lot of doctors tried diagnosing it as Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which I am beyond thankful I didn't have, because that makes you end up in a burns unit, where basically 99% of the time it tends to happen because of a result of allergic reaction to medication. The moment that they actually found out what medication I was on when I came into hospital, they took me off it because it can cause ulcers in the mouth. So I don't know whether I could have started to develop Stevens-Johnson syndrome as a result of those medications, for the pure fact that I don't know if you guys can see, but I had a few of these marks and they are blistered on my skin, and they were around my arm here, and I had some develop on my back. And if you see beginning photos of Stevens-Johnson syndrome, it is blistering and red patches that begin to happen, and then you end up in a burns unit because your skin starts to peel. I obviously didn't know this amount of information about all this stuff. I was hearing these different things. I thought, oh, right, okay, at least they might have found out what's going on. I was a bit of a haze. My parents were doing all the research, and I could tell by the looks on their faces they were really concerned at this point as to what it would be. I then had this incredible man come in, who's actually my dermatologist, who actually classified that it was actually a form of Mycoplasma pneumonia. But the way in which I reacted to it, which is similar to Stevens-Johnson syndrome, is incredibly rare. And basically the reason I had a full face of infection as severe as I did, so similar to Stevens-Johnson syndrome, was as a result of my immune system being incredibly compromised. The most strangest thing about all of this is the way in which I reacted to it is so incredibly rare. They're actually doing a case study on me, which I don't know whether to feel like happy about or kind of sad about, but yeah, I'm going in a published report, which is kind of cool, even though I had the shittest time of my life, as you can see by the photos. But yeah, like I said, like at that point they started giving me the right medication. I then had to go on to malnutrition shakes because I was losing a lot of weight in hospital. So I'd gone from 80 kilograms in September, then went down to 71 kilograms, and then was down to 67 kilograms in hospital. And the malnutrition shakes, if anyone's ever heard of them, were onshore compact and onshore drinks, and they were brilliant. They were really, really good. They basically just gave me all the nutrients in a liquid form, which I literally had these gigantic pipettes like putting in my mouth, because as you would have seen from the photos, the infection was incredibly severe. And things were incredibly difficult, but I think the one thing that honestly kept me through, like I said, was my parents, and honestly having the support from everyone as well, all the amazing messages that I received whilst I was in hospital, it honestly meant the world. I'm really sorry, it is just such a blur to talk about everything that happened in detail in hospital, because I was just in and out of scans and examinations. The drooling was happening every day. I was just exhausted. I spent all my time in bed and I felt like I was emaciating away. And when I look back and think I've actually been through that, like I can't believe I have, but I have. It's just the most weirdest thing. Sorry, I'm a bit emotional about it because I'm still, you know, not 100% now. Like, obviously my face is a lot better, but mentally it was incredibly hard. Because of being so dehydrated, they couldn't get cannulas in me for quite some time. Medication kept stopping and starting. It was just an incredibly scary experience, and I can't express how thankful I am to be out on the other side of it, but I honestly would not wish this on my worst enemy. It's honestly the most hardest thing I've had to go through, but you have to try and keep positive as possible, because, you know, I wanted to be there for my family. It sounds so stupid, like it's just so hard filming this video because I just don't know what to say. You put into a situation that you have no control over it, so how, like, what other way can you do to react around it? Like, I am just so thankful for the amazing people that worked so hard, like fetch me stupid sick bowls to be spitting in and help clean my mouth and just help look after me. Like, with feeling like completely incompetent, just the support network I had around me to help me get through, like, that is one of the biggest things that people need in life. And I honestly feel that if my parents and this team there weren't as amazing as what they were, like, I just wouldn't be here. Like, I really wouldn't be here. So I'm eternally forever grateful for everyone that helped me. But yeah, 10 long days in a square box room was hard, and I was eventually allowed to go home because at this point I could start taking the medication orally. Was still very difficult when I came home because obviously everything was now down to my parents. All the formulas had to be made up, and I essentially was on antibiotics from the 21st of December up until last week, and we are currently on the 6th of March. So I've been on them for a really, really long time. I've recently just had quite a few problems with my nose in regards to infection because the oxygen mask just completely dried it out. And to be honest with you, with everything that was going on with my eyes, because of the effect that the severe eye infection had, because I had blisters developing over my eyes, a lot of my eyelashes fell out, and I don't know whether you'll actually see it, but I get a severe red line happen within my eye, particularly when I'm tired, which now happens, and I get a lot of like overproduction of gunk in there. I've still got scarring on the inside of my mouth here and up here, and the top lip was incredibly sensitive for such a long time, and my tongue only really healed about 3 weeks after coming back home, and I had quite a lisp for a long time. So obviously I haven't recorded all of those things, but any photos I haven't put up yet I will try and put up as well to show you. But yeah, I came back home and was on basically 6 weeks recovery, which I ended about 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, but I came back to university on my 6th week of recovery, because I'm definitely a mind over matter kind of person. Like, I always go with my head, and because I started to manage to get around the house and start to have a bit more life in me and just start to feel a bit more me, I really just wanted to get back into routine, because that was definitely something that I miss so much. I'm definitely a routine person. But yeah, essentially I can't really think of anything else that I went through. Obviously all the medication helped to get rid of the respiratory tract infection and to help ease the tonsillitis, which should eventually go. This scar that's on here, I don't know how long it's going to last, and on my back as well. I've had to put quite a lot of weight on as well as a result of it, but I haven't had hair like this in years. I haven't had skin like this in years. I haven't had nail growth like this in years. Even after all of that, I'm becoming the healthiest version of myself that I've been for a long time, and I am so much happier as well as a result of it. But losing 2 stone, partly because of being in hospital, partly because of my own fault, wasn't the smartest move. Please, 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 please put your health first, because this was one of the scariest experiences that I've ever been through, and I don't want to ever have to go through anything like this again because I've not put my health as a priority. It is very common in university students that pneumonia can develop and happen, so it is really imperative that you do look after yourselves, particularly with everything that's going on with the coronavirus, that you do just make sure that your health is priority, because at the end of the day, fuck looks, fuck aesthetics, fuck everything else. Your health is what you have taken you forward. It's the only thing that keeps you alive. If you don't have that, you have nothing. So please look after your health. I don't care if I've put on weight. I don't care if I've got a double chin. Like, I don't give a shit anymore. Like, all that matters is that I got given a chance again with life, and I'm going to be the best and healthiest version of myself that I can be. That is all that matters. So please take that from today's video. I don't know how long this has been. My camera percentage has already gone down by like 40%, which is great. But I hope you guys were able to stay to the end and you've been able to take something from this. I feel like it's a lot shorter than what I would thought it would be, but I don't necessarily think that's actually a bad thing. But if anyone does have any other questions or wants to talk to me about anything, or whether you've been through this or you've got somebody you know going through this, please email me. Please follow my Instagram. Like I said, it's in the drop box down below. Give me a message. I am more than willing to help anyone regarding this, even if it's to do with the whole omeprazole thing, or if there's just certain areas, because my brain's just a little bit fuzzed, that I haven't really touched upon much. You guys can you literally can ask me anything. So please email me. That's in the description box as well. But yeah, that's definitely a closed chapter now. Don't want to relive it. Don't want to talk about it. But no, I really hope the medical journal actually helps a lot of individuals as well, a lot with scientific research, and help anyone else that has any experience like me with the same thing, gets the help that they need. Just to actually finish this video off on a much healthier and happier note, in light of all of this, I wanted to give something back And a while ago on my personal Facebook account, I decided that I wanted to raise some money for the British Lung Foundation. I believe it was £165 in total which was sent away, and I just want to say a special thanks to the most incredible people that donated for that. You truly are amazing, and it fills me with so much joy that we've been able to accomplish something really positive out of a really negative situation. My mum and I are also going to be doing more things for the British Lung Foundation this year. There are walks, there are marathons, there's also little, I think it's similar to like Macmillan Cancer tea parties and stuff, so we're going to do things like that, but do our bit for charity. And yeah, I think that's quite a nice little way to end the video, really. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone that donated. To send that off felt truly incredible. But that's where I'm going to leave it. So thank you so much for watching. I will be back very soon with a different kind of video, and I really look forward to a fresh year and having a different start. And even though I was in Christmas, in hospital over the Christmas period, and I didn't get really to have a Christmas, I'm very much looking forward to just a fresh start in the new year. It feels a bit weird because the time lapsed a little bit, but yeah. Things happen in life for a reason, guys. Just always try to take the positive out of it as much as possible. And remember that health is the main priority. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and your ongoing support, and I can't wait to take you guys further with my journey. Take care, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.